All right, so this is my first collective biodiesel conference. I've never been here. And so I'm thinking about that and saying, well, Piedmont has been to a bunch of these. So you guys know our folks. You know Matt Rudolph and Greg Ostick and Moya. And Piedmont has always represented fairly well at these, but it's never been me. And of course, on our project, I'm sort of the old man of biodiesel. And I'm more actively involved in things like policy and finance and regulatory affairs and these kinds of things, which means that a lot of the young Turks that come out to the collective biodiesel conference kind of view me as sort of irrelevant and largely out to pasture. And that means that they come home and they talk, you know, they always come home jazzed, they always come home full of vim and vinegar and all psyched up and ready to charge into the year ahead after coming to one of these events. And they always say things like, oh, Lyle, it's about valves, and it's about, oh, I saw this new actuator, and I had this great conversation, you know, it's about biodiesel nerds, and Lyle, you know, it has nothing to do with you. So, if you could hit it, I decided that I would talk about my new intelligent emergency shutoff for trunnion and floating ball valves today. That's, actually, not really. Can you hit it again? I'm supposed to be talking about Biodiesels New Leaf, and I think that the way this conference has risen and fallen and come back again is sort of indicative of the entire grassroots endeavor. So I will say that, you know, when the Johns out in Colorado started this project, you know, the thing is powered by volunteer energy. It's powered by cobbling things together. So you get a school and you get a dorm and you find a cafeteria and you keep it cheap and you don't make any money and you work and you work and you work and you kill yourself and you finally get something going. And then, of course, volunteer energy over the long haul is very difficult to sustain. So it tends to run out and the ball gets passed over to Frankie on the East Coast and, you know, people fall to fighting and it's a mess. And so when I got Brian's email early in the spring, I thought, what? You know, Vancouver Island? Are you kidding? Canadians? Are you joking? Is this some kind of joke? And then I started thinking about all the dead projects that we all know about along the way. All of the collectives that are bust and all of the carnage that this community scale biodiesel industry has wrought. And thought, wow, this is exactly it. This is a bunch of people that are going to just take the ball and run with it, and it doesn't matter if they're in an obscure part of North America. It really makes all the sense in the world, so I had to go. And that's why I'm here. And my hat is off to you. I think you've done a great job of organizing. And I can't believe the sponsors. Good heavens. We've had to pick up the Sustainable Biodiesel Summit twice. When it, you know, falling from the ashes. That's over on the SBA side of the street, right? That's where we kind of get together to, you know, bash the NBB and so on. And having done a couple of conference rescues in the past, I'm going to go home and look for sponsors the next time we have to resuscitate something. So that's great. All right, hit it. I should also say that one of the reasons I'm here is that 25 years ago I lived in Vancouver. And when I lived in Vancouver, I did not have 2 nickels to rub together. I was married to, you know, my angry first wife who was pregnant, and I didn't know the term at the time. It probably was in the lexicon. I wasn't familiar with it, but we were food insecure. And this is where I did my grocery shopping. The fact is that I had no credit left anywhere. I had no money, and the only place that I could buy food was with my Petro-Canada card. And so, having had that experience in Vancouver, I was really dying to bring my current wife and children back to this neck of the woods to run around Vancouver and to take that marvelous ferry ride out here to show them what I had gone through as a young pup. All right, you can hit that. All right, so the Piedmont Biofuels story, a lot of you know it. We started by deep frying turkeys, and when you deep fry a turkey, you're left with 4 or 5 gallons of used cooking oil, and when you throw that cooking oil in the woods, it presents itself as good energy that's left over by looking at the way the critters and the bugs and the dogs are attracted to it. So it just seemed so wasteful to me. So like many other people in the room, I went out and got a copy of From the Fryer to the Fuel Tank and embarked on my journey, and I was just making fuel in the backyard. And then Rachel and Leaf jumped in, and we became a small backyard operation that was finding our way. And probably like many of your stories, we could never make enough fuel to make everybody happy. We were always chronically out of fuel. I remember that we'd make a 10-gallon reactor, and then we'd get a 30-gallon reactor, and then we don't talk about the 75-gallon reactor because it blew up, and we just sort of found our way. And there's always more people wanting fuel and more people wanting fuel, and we were chronically out of fuel. We went out and bought a little short truck, held 1,500 gallons of fuel, and when you're making 80-gallon batches, 1,500 gallons feels like a lot of fuel. We brought it back to project. We drove it down across the state. We filled it up at a rail car. We came into town. We had 1,500 gallons of B100, and the local school district called and ordered 2,000 gallons. And we said, no. We're going to ship you 1,000 gallons, and we're going to keep 500 for ourselves because we want to know what it feels like to have 500 gallons of fuel on hand. So anyway, chronically unable to meet the demand for the interest level is a part of the Piedmont story. We formed a little co-op. I'm not sure why exactly. I think it was because one of our business partners, Leaf, was a co-op guy. He lived in a co-op house. He shopped at a co-op grocery store. He thought that cooperative business was the way to go, and so we became a co-op. And we're still a co-op to this day. Today we are powering about 450 drivers, and they take a subset of the fuel that comes off of our line. Most of our fuel still goes to petroleum companies, but we are still powering the what's called the B100 Community Trail and keeping that trail stocked. And it's funny because today we're at $3.75 a gallon, which in North Carolina is about 25 cents cheaper than the street. So for the first time in 8 years, we're actually less expensive than the petroleum counterpart, which is just utterly bizarre. We've always been asking, when diesel was at $1.59, we were at $3.50, and when diesel was at $2.09, we were at $3.50, and so on. So now we're attracting a whole new demographic, which is sort of the cheap fuel crowd, and that's new and different for us. So it's sort of like the oil company business was always here, and the membership business was always here, and now the teeter-totter is starting to sway a little bit. And of course, it's our dream in terms of community-scale biodiesel to have every drop go to our growing membership. So forget about the particulate filters on the back end. We're growing, and it might be price-driven right now. Who knows? All right, we became a co-op. All right, so as you know, making money in biodiesel is drop-dead easy. And that is, you go get a vacuum truck, and you go out and you collect the oil, and then you go get a short truck to go deliver the oil, and if you go back, all you have to do is make sure this guy leaves empty every day and comes home full, and if you go forward, you make sure this guy leaves full every morning and comes home empty. Simple as pie. And if you want to really know about making money in community-scale biodiesel, I would say talk to Kumar. All right. So when we started making biodiesel in the backyard, I think people thought we were quirky. And, powered by vegetable oil, all this sort of stuff. Lots of media attention and news crews and so on. We were just sort of quirky. And then there was that period when biodiesel was going to save the world, and biodiesel was immensely sexy. And at that point, we had a crush of interest and media attention, and it was absolutely fabulous. And then biodiesel became evil. And we saw a little bit of that in Josh's film last night. That's when we were accused of crimes against humanity. That's when we were responsible for starving children in Mexico and so on. And so along the way, I've been quirky, and I've been sexy, and I've been evil. And I would say that sexy is better. We went out and bought an abandoned industrial park in Pittsboro, North Carolina, and we went ahead, go ahead, Jesse, and we went ahead and built our plant. We did every weld ourselves, we fitted every pipe ourselves, so we accidentally became experts at a lot of this stuff. And we put together a 1 million gallon facility, which is where I work today. All right. Something I wanted to point out, some of you may remember Bob Armitrott. I think Barb was a fixture at some of the early cooperative biodiesel conferences. He now lives next door. And we got this little sticker on our tank. That came from the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance. We got a gold sticker from them, and we've put that on all 6 of our locations, and it's a fuel quality issue. One of the things that we did is we became a BQ 9000 accredited facility. We're the only one of its kind in North Carolina. I think we're the smallest BQ 9000 accredited facility on Earth. And as the result, we're the only operation in North Carolina that's allowed to sell on state contract. So a lot of our fuel goes into the fuel bus fleets and to the Department of Transportation fleets and so on and so forth. So we came up with a fuel quality thing. And when the SBA came out with their certification process, we jumped on board and applied, and we got our sticker. So I don't know what will happen. Maybe next year we'll get an ELF stamp or something. Okay. And one of the things that we've done at Piedmont along the way is we've always said, oh, it's about the fuel. So people, Rachel still works at Piedmont and Leaf still works at Piedmont. We're still together 9 years later. Nobody has gotten pissed off and taken their reactor and gone home. And when you think about all of the projects that have collapsed and all of the people who are no longer brewing and all of the times that projects haven't even survived a move from one side of town to the other, Piedmont has survived. And people often ask us, how did you do that? And we used to say, well, we put the fuel first. What is in the best interest of the fuel? If we just put the best interest of the fuel first and subjugate our own personal interests, then we all get along fine, and that's our secret to success. But I think that as the years wear on, I realize that that's absolutely wrong. And in fact, it has nothing to do with the best interest of the fuel. In fact, it's the people that run around on the fuel that matter. Now, because you guys are a bunch of technical nerds, and before you sort of slaughter me for lack of authenticity and say, hey, that's a gas car, what's that doing in this picture? It had a blown head gasket, and I took the gasoline engine out and I put a 300 TD motor in there, so that really is a biodiesel-powered convertible. And well, it's not one of my better ideas, custom motor mounts, custom transmission mounts. It's on its 2nd motor and 2nd transmission so far. But when the sun is up and it starts, it's a treat to drive. Some of you may know Chris Jude. Chris Jude left our project and went out to the Seattle area to be a solar installer. And that didn't really go his way, so he came back to Piedmont. And when he returned, he said, the only difference between Pittsboro, North Carolina, and every other small town in America is there are more diesels in the parking lot. And that was his observation from his world travels. Okay, so along the way, Piedmont has had a hard time staying on topic, and we have spawned a couple of sustainable farms and a biodiversity project, and go ahead and hit it. And we make the same mistake that we once made with fuel when it comes to food, and that is that when you start growing things, you accidentally think that it's about yield, or you think it's about calories, or you think it's about tonnage, or you think it's about price. Go ahead. And we developed a bioregionally appropriate pepper that does really well with our diseases and our funguses and our pests and so on. You think it's about these things when you go into agriculture. We have about 6 acres under cultivation right now. But it turns out that really food has nothing to do with any of those things, and it's about the people who want to eat that food. So just like it's not the fuel, it's the drivers. It's not the food, it's the eaters, has been one of the lessons learned for us along the way. Yeah. We find the same is true in the policy arena. So this is Senator Kay Hagan from North Carolina and Senator Dorgman from North Dakota. He was once the chair of the Senate Energy Committee. They came for a tour. When you are educating people on the policy level, you make the same mistake. And you think it's about verbiage, you think it's about the opposition, you think it's about maneuvering your way through the legislature. You think it's about who your allies and who your opponents are. But at the end of the day, it's actually about the people that policy is going to benefit. And we tend to make this mistake over and over again. All right. We do the same thing with innovation. Some of you may remember David Thornton. He was the founder of our design build group, and we've developed a cavitational reactor, and we've innovated and we've experimented, and we've come out with this enzymatic catalysis that Greg invented, and Greg and Rachel and Shahu and company, and it's the same thing. When you're lost in the science, it's so easy to be into the BTUs and will the experiment work and the wastewater component and the this and the that and the this, and it's very easy to forget that in fact it's about the people who are going to benefit from the science that you're working on. All right. Piedmont has also had some darkness along the way. So we had a tank explosion. We had 2 guys blown off the top of a 4-story tank and put into ICU, one in the burn victim unit and one in ICU. We have had the death of my brother Mark, who was one of our founders and our financier. We've had spills that we've had to pay fines on. We've had fires. It's funny, I watched Brian deal with that toaster fire over in the cafeteria this morning, and I was thinking, what a piece of cake. With this group, look, there's a little fire. It's electrical, it's toast. And I think Brian walked over and before unplugging it, he just blew it out. The idea is, so anyway, Piedmont has had some darkness, and the same is also true of, we've been buffeted about by global commodity markets. We've been, caught in the cash crunch and the Great Depression that is going on right now in the United States, and this journey has not been without its dark moments. So, for those of us that are still on the roller coaster, which is biodiesel, down in the States, we're sitting here saying, well, will we get our dollar back? Actually, Kumar, do you know the answer to that? Will we have our dollar in January?
The RINs are so high, I don't really care.
You don't really care. All right. So will RINs stay high, Kumar?
I hope so.
Okay. So for those of us that are still on this biodiesel roller coaster, which has been a bruising ride, this really the only thing to say is hang on. Go ahead.
Is that on site?
And remember, what's that?
Is that on site? Roller coaster on site?
Roller coaster is not on site. No, I think that might have been at the State Fair or something like that shot. So the thing is to hang on and remember it's the people that we came for and the people that we're working on. All right, that said, what's the future of Piedmont? Well, we're building again, and it seems like it doesn't matter. We are always reaching for our welders and installing more tankage, and we're putting an enzymatic front end onto our plant so that will allow us to avail ourselves of the really crummy fats, oils, and greases that we can't handle today. So it seems like we're always in this state, doing hot work in our reactor rooms and in a chronic state of having to plumb and replumb and so on as we change feedstocks. So we're building an enzymatic front end, and then that brings us to Biodiesels New Leaf, which I guess is maybe a maple leaf. And is also, I think it's just one of resilience, and it's one of staying standing, and I guess maybe as a movement or as an endeavor, perhaps we should think of ourselves as being hard to eradicate. And that's it. Do you want me to take questions,
Yeah, we would love that.
Jesse? So any questions about anything from anybody? Yes.
Lyle, I'm a backyard grower from just up the road here.
Yes.
And I actually talked to, I think maybe a few years ago, and there was a bunch of individuals in the co-op. And now, of course, it's much bigger. And one of the things that I was thinking about up in Piedmont Valley is, well, if you go out and start a co-op, because I actually looked at starting a business. And I still haven't started that, it's 5 years later, so maybe you can talk about...
The obvious advantage is what resources can be brought to bear by your other co-op members, right? You're obviously stronger with others than you are on your own, and it's a question of, this guy's got some land, and this guy's got some tankage, and this guy's got a truck, and by pooling those assets, you can sometimes do more damage than if it's one person. Co-op structure, as I don't need to tell you guys, it's exceedingly difficult to manage, because if it's, my money and your membership, we're equals. And that's a really tough thing to get around. So figuring out how to do that exactly is not something I'm an expert at. We've managed to keep it together barely, but so I think that leveraging other people's resources is probably the big strength of going into the co-op. And I mean, also building customer base, that's the other thing. If you can get, one of the things we've benefited from immensely over the years is a dedicated customer base that pays a big premium. So, if you can get that extra $1.50, or, if the dollar goes away and RINs collapse, we might be able to stay standing by going to our members and saying, hey guys, we need $4.50. And we'll have a subset of the membership, not the new cheap fuel guys that are piling in now, but the core that will pay it and will stay on, because they'd like to be able to call up the guy that needs their fuel.
I mean, maybe what you were talking about throughout your presentation is about the people is fundamentally what belongs to the fact.
Sure. No, it's true. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the byproducts and developing markets for the byproducts of the process?
Okay, so like everybody else in 2002, we would come by a pound of fat and throw about 20% away. Or we would actually pay to tip it into compost. You know, it's non-toxic and compostable, and yeah, that's easy. Well, you can't make any money doing that, has been our experience. And so we built a little biorefinery at our plant. And so now when a pound of fat comes to the gate, whether we've collected it or acquired it by any means, we're able to do the methanol recovery. We're drying that methanol out and reusing it in the next batch, which is reducing our carbon footprint for our fuel and also reducing operating costs. We break out the free fatty acids and sell those to animal feeds. You know, that's I don't think that's an idea that came from the animals exactly, but and then that leaves us with a fairly cleaned up glycerin that we're able to sell into specialty chemical applications. That would include release agents, where they're doing maybe asphalt trucks, where they spray the bed with glycerin, they fill it up with asphalt, drive out, and then when they dump it on the road, it all releases, so concrete forms. We sell it as a surfactant for people in dust suppression that are wanting their water to go a little further. It works great for that. We sell it to the coal industry, which you can't escape the giant piles of coal all around here if you take a ferry. And that's for, again, it's a materials handling thing, so they'll spray it on the coal piles to lower the freezing point to make it so that they can push it into their hoppers or onto ships or trains or whatever. So it is imperative that you get it cleaned up. It's extremely difficult to move as a bottom. So if you're going to sell it with free fatty acids and methanol in, very hard to find a home for it and very difficult to do anything. So we're now able to monetize every ounce, and it's critical to our economic survival that we are able to do that. So on the feedstock side of the street, we've moved to zero waste. And by the way, a lot of this is in Industrial Evolution, which is right down the hall, and you should buy as many copies as you can possibly afford. Kumar.
So, a byproduct of the Sustainable Biosummit in North Carolina recently was my ears perked up, as did the other folks in my company, when we learned that you could actually transesterify using your enzyme process with ethanol. That would work better for the transesterification side of that than methanol. And I'm curious if you guys have talked about moving in that direction.
We have not. So while we have been able to transesterify with enzymatic catalysis, we basically have put the brakes on that, and we're going full out on esterification. So we feel like the immediate opportunity, as all of us running plants are under capacity right now, we feel like the immediate opportunity is a sort of a bolt-on front end that allows you to buy or acquire the really crummy stuff and knock it into shape and into biodiesel as you feed it into the transesterification fleet. So as long as we have a transesterification fleet that's sitting here not at capacity, we feel like the enzymatic opportunity lies in that front end. Now, having said that, and we're building that now, so let me get back to you when it's working. At scale. We have a little pilot scale enzymatic skid that makes a whopping 30 gallons a day. And other than that, we have a whole bunch of spreadsheets and laboratory results that says this will be economical at scale. We're building the scale. We've raised the money. We're building the scale portion. And, it's supposed to be done in the fall of 2011. So maybe get back to me a year from now and we'll know how it's working. No, I'm not sure. We will be bringing that to market, and we do have some licensure agreements, and we do have some customers. We do have a backlog of people waiting for that. And I would guess that the natural order of things is once the esterification and enzymatic front-end esterification piece is rolling and working and starts, traveling throughout the industry, then we'll turn the guns on the transesterification piece, which not only opens up the door to ethanol, but also gives you a really pure glycerin product. It's white.
We've seen that in our labs too. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if I could have that, maybe I could be happy one time. Yeah.
So you talked about it's not about the X, it's about the people, and that's a lesson that you've learned in a few areas. So how does that lesson change the way you react to situations, or like what should we draw from that so that we can kind of incorporate that lesson in the decisions that we make.
Yeah, give some examples of.
That's a great question. I think one of the things that this learning has embodied is communication, and communication with one another and with the membership. Our communication has gone way up. So it used to be, oh, the tank ran out of fuel. That's a technical problem. Why? Oh, the truck's down. You know, why is the truck down? Oh, because it's gelled. Oh, well, who's the idiot that forgot to blend with petroleum? Oh, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so you focus on why aren't you getting fuel to the tank and all the supply chain issues associated with it, when in fact, the problem is telling Mrs. Ferguson, don't come down here to pump your fuel because the tank's empty. You know, increasing the communication. And our last outage, which I guess was maybe in June, we, what did we do? We flunked like 3 or 4 batches in a row. And we changed our filter media. We went off of Magnesol and went to a new filter media, and it started sort of inexplicably driving our acid number up. And because we're BQ9000, we can't release anything into the world that isn't spot on, drop dead beautiful. And so it was sort of batch, and with us, the only way we can beat a bad acid number is blend it down. So I better have a good batch coming in the pipeline in order to blend my way out of this problem. So you give me a bad batch, and suddenly I'm fucked. And the idea is letting people know that. Letting people know that, yeah, we've hit this fuel quality problem and we can't release this to the world. And hanging on to our fuel quality commitment is more important than letting it slide. And, my members, none of them even know what an acid value is. They don't care. But, and they, as long as they can just fill up and drive. But the whole idea of communicating and sticking with it. So I think that maybe what is the big lesson? We tend to focus internally, right? We tend to turn inward when we are in the face of challenges and problems. And that is maybe the human animal's natural instinct. How do I solve this problem? Whereas maybe the lesson is, no, stay outward. Be transparent, be authentic, and you'll find that Mrs. Ferguson's okay. With a tank of petroleum, she might stick with you and be grateful that she got the email and that you, were just honest with her. So, yeah.
Where does your methanol come from?
Our methanol comes from faraway economies that have stranded natural gas reserves. So it comes into Wilmington Harbor on tankers, super tankers. Wilmington's about an hour and a half from us. The super tankers are coming from places like Equatorial Guinea and Chile and Dominican Republic. And today, because it's difficult to move natural gas in the absence of a pipeline, you go to one of these places that has a bunch of natural gas and no economy to power, so they turn it into methanol, put it on a boat, and ship it to thirsty America. So, we still have a good percentage of, toxic, unsustainable, nasty stuff that comes through the plant. And some of our recovered methanol that trickles back into the process.
Yeah, just again, kind of continuing on to that and what I was saying earlier, I think one of the things that Josh may have missed in his movie that I hope he addresses in a future cut of it is the role that ethanol can play in the biodiesel industry. And if we can produce local ethanol, we can make biodiesel that can be a lot more local. And that's one of the things I'll be talking about later this morning.
Got it. Yeah.
What kind of lye are you using?
We use potassium mostly. We're using either potassium or sodium hydroxide. Our catalyst is set by our glycerin customer. So if the glycerin customer is doing, say, wastewater remediation, they may not be able to have enough, ion exchange for sodium and will demand potassium. Sometimes people prefer the sodium. So it depends who we're selling our glycerin to. That sets our catalyst.
Who prefers the sodium?
Sodium stands up better if you want more of a cake, you want more of a solid, and so people that are doing, again, it depends on, feeding a digester, depends what they're doing that says it. And I don't have as many people demanding sodium. Sodium tends to be a little cheaper sometimes. You use a little less of it.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth. For a while there, we were on methylate. Back when we had money one time, we were using methylate. Yeah.
If you could start from scratch on a co-op, for those, a lot of here want to start a co-op, what advice would you give on how to start a successful?
Walk. You know, ride a bike. No. So what do you want? Well, the one thing you want is an activist board. So you need all hands on deck. So just because you're good looking or you're popular and you're not going to do anything, that doesn't help you on the board. So you want an activist board that is going to wade in, whether it's at the legislature or at the scrapyard when you need 55-gallon drums. Whatever the need is, you need help. So I think one of the problems with co-ops is inactive board members. They might have marquee value, but they don't do anything. So put in your bylaws the fact that if you miss a meeting, you're easy to turf. And then turf regularly, trim, and manage your board in such a way that you can not have a bunch of deadwood. That would be one thing. And then I guess the second thing is spend a little time on policy governance so that your board isn't overarching. While you need them, you need to be able to task them to help you and so on and so forth. You don't need them setting the recipe for you. You don't need them down in the trenches in your way, telling the staff and the people whose job it is to deliver the mission, how to behave and what they did wrong on the trucks. It's sort of like you do want that separation. So you want work and activism, and you want them lobbying for you, but you don't want them in your hair. So you want both of those things, and then communicate, which is both ways. Not only to the members that you're serving, but also to the board, so that everyone is in the loop and as much as possible. Yeah.
In here at Council Biodiesel CoOp, and I can't speak for everyone, but quite a few of us reminisced backwards and thought that it may have been a good idea to stay as a brewing club a little bit longer. So, especially in Canada, because, well, I shouldn't say especially in Canada, as soon as we became incorporated and became a co-op, there were a lot more things we had to deal with. Now, the downside of that is, if you stay at brewing club longer, you might get bad apples that are totally in it for cheap fuel, they're totally in it for the wrong reasons. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to cause a spill, maybe they're going to hurt someone or hurt themselves. So if you can remain a brewing club, but try to have the high standards you can of members and stress safety and stress people, and then when you got your shit together there, then move into a co-op stage, because you're going to be ready for it. You're going to have your ducks in the line. So, that's something we look back and say, we should have stayed a brewing club longer.
Right,
and we actually came up with that term in case
right, and so
it's a group of people, but find the people that are in it for the right reasons, because then you get all this other hassle of people. They don't care anything about it. Cheap fuel, and all the information that goes out to people. Say, oh yeah, I want to make vegetable fuel. I can go up to a camp, a restaurant and fill up my hand and drive away. And all the mistakes that are made with that, and so.
Well, and I think there's another corollary to that, and that is don't look back.
Okay.
Whenever we look back at Piedmont, it's so ugly we can't stand it, and so we just have to keep looking forward.
Yeah.
We have 3 years as a brewery club, so
it was quite a while. We needed to move on for sure. But
yeah.
Thanks, Lyle. What's your sense of the demand for biodiesel and particularly ethanol? You make ethanol now?
No.
What's your sense of the demand for that? Because I'm a reporter at the CoOp News Leader here, and we've done many stories about people are sick of being screwed by oil companies, and that we barely ever do gas price war stuff anymore because they have a monopoly.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know far more about gas pricing than we do. But what's your sense that people want ethanol, they want to switch over right away?
Well, okay, so
what's your sense of
if you are at the same price as petroleum, the demand to me appears endless. So the caveat is if you're at the same price as petroleum. So if I'm trying to sell a $6 fuel in a $3 world, okay, I might have some fuel in the tank to sell and a little bit of surplus. But if you can make a gallon, within 1/10 of a penny of petroleum, every drop will be sold before it even hits the terminal. And in fact, we spend most of our life saying, sorry, can't help you. Sorry, can't help you.
You just can't produce enough yet.
Oh yeah, and there's no way. I mean, in North Carolina, we're a 1 million gallon facility. North Carolina, our little state, which probably is maybe the size of Vancouver Island, geographically, burns 4 million gallons of diesel a day. I had Norfolk Southern call me up the other day. That's a railroad company down in the States, and they also burn 1 million gallons a day. I'm on the phone, it's like, okay, so if I had a tank big enough and I could put a year's production in the yard, then, I could take care of your Monday needs. And when it comes to powering our economy, it's like, okay, well, I can take you from 9 to 5, and you're going to need another supplier after that. So the demand is so vast that it boggles the mind. Now, the caveat is, you've got to be able to hit it at that petroleum price, and when you can do that, it's all sold, and demand is limitless. Yeah?
I understand you have the national renewable fuel standard that you're probably subject to, but what in North Carolina itself, what's the regulatory environment around the fuel? Does the state have particular mandates or?
No, we have nothing. We have no state mandates. We have no state support. We have nothing. And so at Piedmont, we have a fairly active consulting business. And so one of the things that we tell our customers is no one would build a biodiesel plant in North Carolina today. Go to South Carolina where you can pick up 20 cents. Go to Kentucky where they have $1 on the table. In fact, I get calls from economic developers in Kentucky, which is right next door, not that far. Imagine a little operation like ours, and it would be worth $1 million to move to Kentucky. It's sort of like, wow, we do $1.5 million a year, and you're going to give me $1 million to move. Unbelievable. So Pennsylvania's got 50 cents and so on and so forth. So we have no incentives. Now, having said that, our Department of Transportation burns more than its fair share of biodiesel. I think they might be something like the 5th largest consumer of biodiesel in the land. And so you have a very soft, non-legislative commitment to it through our Department of Transportation. And the other driver that we have, which is, forget the renewable fuel standard and the mandates and so on, the real driver is air quality. So as long as your air quality is in decline, you will find biodiesel demand is rising. And that will especially be true of government fleets. The way it works in the United States is the EPA comes to town and says, hey, Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, your air is nasty and in non-attainment. So you need to do something about this, or we're going to recommend that you don't get any more highway funds. Okay, so suddenly all the governments in the area go, oh no more highway funds, what are we going to do? So let's move to B20 in all of our buses, and let's put B20 on the trains, and let's put B20, and so then when the EPA comes back next year and says, okay, what did you do? Oh, we moved to B20 in our buses. Okay, well good, we'll see you next year and see what else you did. And so because it's so easy to replace petroleum with biodiesel, it's sort of the low-hanging fruit. If you're not going to put scrubbers on smokestacks, then maybe you can put a shot of bio in your bus. Yeah.
One thing I'm always jealous of with Piedmont that you guys do so well is lobbying and talking to the government. And the flip side of that is when you're focused inward, as my company has been at times, without any focus on talking to the government officials, we had the local trash or street sweeping need to replace their fleet, and we could not get them to use biodiesel in their old diesel street sweepers. They went with a compressed natural gas street sweeper, which cost them something like $1.5 million when you included the station for that. And they could have easily just switched to biodiesel, and we weren't able to get the resources going to mount that movement. So.
Well, and before you get too excited about how successful we are, I would say that our policy efforts are sort of abject failure. Our local government burns very little biodiesel. So some of the school buses, I guess, and we have our waste management guys, our garbage trucks on it. But we've got a new Tea Party board of commissioners running Chatham County, and they came through town the other day. And the idea was, wow, we've been here for 8 years making fuel, and to this day, Chatham County government goes out and buys tankers full of gasoline to insure them through the hurricane season. So they spot tankers of gasoline for emergency preparedness, and it's like, you've had 8 years to switch into diesels in your, inspectors' fleets and in your, the fleets that you operate, and you haven't. You're still buying gas cars, you're still buying gas SUVs, and, here I am with a 12,000 gallon tank of biodiesel on the side of town, and you're buying, 7,500 gallon tanker trucks for gasoline to get you through hurricane season. So I would say, don't be too excited about Piedmont's policy efforts. We're actually in the fight of our lives on grease police. I don't know if some of you have seen it, but the grease police legislation up against the big renderers in North Carolina, that's our current battle. We won the first round against them in the legislature, and they sued us. They took us to court. And actually, some of you remember Moya. They brought Moya up on charges, and we won that one. And, they can't beat us in the marketplace. They can't beat us in court. They can only beat us down at the legislature. And that means they're down there, and we're up against big fat, who, by the way, have lobbyists that sit there all day, right? That's the thing that's also patently unfair. It's like, all right, I can go down to Raleigh and spend a day. I can waste another non-revenue producing day. But, these guys sit there outside the legislature doors, so that they're there when I go in for my meeting, they're there when I come out, and they're there tomorrow when I've got stuff to do. So one of the nice things about it is that we have a rabid right-wing radio station, AM talk radio, shock jock, Glenn Beck station, who wrote a song about grease police. I think they set it to an Aerosmith tune or something like that, the Dream Police, and completely savaged their own. So the right wing is eating their own in North Carolina right now on grease police legislation. But legislature's not in session right now. When it is, they'll be back. Right now the score is Piedmont 3, big fat 0, and I don't know how long we can continue putting up wins like that. We might end up folding eventually. Yes, John?
How much is spent on legal fees? Most
Nothing.
plans have a balance sheet that they're always looking at, they're obsessing over. But that's things like how much does the KOH cost, how much does methanol cost, how much are our revenue stream. But it doesn't look at running the business side of it.
Right. So the answer is nothing. We've got a legal fee line item in our general ledger, but the only time we have legal fees is when we've done ownership changes and have to go, record a new operating agreement, and we don't spend on lawyers to fight back. You're looking at them. So I go down to the legislature, and it's kind of like going to the flagpole after school. It's like one of me and 18 of them, and we go in and make the case. So we don't have any money to spend on legal fees. Yeah.
Hey, Brian Sims with Biodiesels New Leaf. How integral has it been with not only in a general sense but also on for Piedmont outreach for biodiesel to universities, to the high schools, to the youth of the next generation?
Okay, so we've done a mountain of that. We do a lot of outreach and education. We have this clean technology demonstration trailer that we drag around, and hey kids, get together, and we dump sunflower seeds in, and the oil comes out, and then we spin it into fuel in the parking lot, and so on. And some of that has been grant funded. So when the soybean board or someone decides, hey, we need to put on biodiesel workshops throughout the Southeast, then you'll often find Piedmont gets tapped to go do that work, which is also a little bit astonishing. Like the USDA hired us to go work on energy security for the farm. It's like, okay, the USDA is the second largest agency in US government, second to the military. And it's like, right, and you're going to tap Piedmont for on-farm energy security. We've got 12 people. That makes sense. But so we've done some of that. Some of it's for hire, and then a lot of it is also on our dime. And it's interesting. I was invited to speak to the Sierra Club the other day, and I've never been to the Sierra Club. And I wondered why that was. It's because the Sierra Club hates biodiesel as a national policy. They hate biofuels in general. And so in preparation for my talk, I went into it and I realized, I've given a talk a week for 8 years. And some of that's free, some of that's paid for, some of that's like 12th grade chemistry classes, some of that's UNC biotech students, and so on and so forth. And so when I got up to the Sierra Club, I realized that wow, it's been one talk a week for 8 years, and this is my first ever Sierra Club. And of course, they love our project. They love the sustainability underpinnings of what we're doing, and I've been going to Sierra Club after Sierra Club ever since. So we do a lot of that, and I guess you could call that our marketing, maybe, because we don't buy ads in Biodiesel magazine. Sorry about that. We don't, we don't buy ads, and so maybe it's our marketing. I don't know. Our outreach and education. We do a ton of it. It's not lucrative. It doesn't. Sometimes you get a big paid gig from someone, but generally, you just carry on.
If the Sierra Club is mandated against biofuels, why are they so interested all of a sudden?
Well, biofuels suffers from, at breakfast today I was talking to Josh, if you're in biodiesel, you end up as an accidental apologist for ethanol, whether you like it or not. You just have to know the ethanol space, right? Because it's all biofuels. And saying, no, stop, we're not like them. We're better here, 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 and here. It gets old after a while, so you end up having to learn your ethanol. The idea is biofuels evil? Really? Not when you're on waste, not when you're community scale, not when you are a bunch of sustainability addicts, not when you're doing what Kumar's doing, not what you're doing what the homebrewers are doing. It's like biofuels evil, you kind of have that wrong.
So the Sierra Club has figured that out?
Well, I mean, they're starting to, one library basement at a time. We'll get them there. Yeah.
Well, is that the perception with Sierra Club that you're evil is the food versus fuel?
Well, I mean, sure. I think biofuels can be evil on lots of fronts, and our industry doesn't get a pass. So whether we're burning the rainforest in Indonesia to plant palm oil all in a row, to put on a super tanker, to ship to the Seattle harbor, to spin into B100, to put on a train, to send to North Carolina, to put on a truck, to take it out to the Raleigh-Durham International Airport, so that after they've burned enough of it, we give them a prize for being green. It's like, stop the madness. And it's also true for biodiesel going the other way. For a while there, the Europeans came over. When the US dollar went into the dumps before the euro, the Europeans came over to the southeastern United States. They bought up all of the chicken fat in the land, and they basically came to everyone in biodiesel in the southeast and said, well, there were 11 of us, and said, okay, now that we own all the chicken fat, we want you to make fuel for us. And they did a tolling agreement with all of us, including Piedmont. And so the way that works is they send you the chicken fat, you spin it into fuel. We would send it down to Savannah Harbor, where they had at least a 3 million gallon tank with a floating lid. So every day and a half's worth of human endeavor at Piedmont would raise that lid by 1 inch. And after raising that lid, to the point, they would fill a super tanker, send it off to Rotterdam, blend it into the European feedstock so that the guy on the London street corner filling up his smart car could call himself green. Stop the madness. And, so biofuels evil? Yep, check. Whether it's exporting far away, or whether it's burning the rainforest, or whether it's just energy balance. Like one of the things in the film, I don't know if you caught the film last night, but biofuels evil is kind of a no-brainer when it comes to, say, GMO'd corn and energy balance and, being domesticated by these industries. It's like biofuels evil.
How can you make it less evil?
If you ask me, it's about scale. It's about actually, the projects in this room are less evil. Less inclined to be evil. I mean, it's when you're living on the wastes of your island, or you're living on the wastes of your community. If you're, we've got off the charts energy balance on used cooking oil. We'll clobber anything that the ethanol industry wants to throw at us. And the idea is scale, and and transparency, and cooperative mentality, and the people, and actually. Also just the ethos. At Biofuels Oasis, they've got a wonderful bumper sticker that says, driving still sucks. And the notion of getting up in front of a classroom of kids and saying, okay, if you want no emissions, walk, ride your bike, Then if you have to drive, we go into the space. So, I mean, biofuels evil is very easy to get your head around. Yes?
As you convert the vehicle to waste vegetables, vegetable conversion, which has its own issues and so on. And I had some issues with some of the things about ethanol in the film too, and I totally relate to what you're saying, that ethanol has its issues and we have to have a bit of a competition. But the problem that I find, and Josh addressed that at the end, that I think there's a need for all of us to work together and not divide one against the other. You know, ethanol has its issues, but it's also, it's also a biofuel. And biodiesel and the vegetable converters also have issues with each other, and I think that's totally unnecessary because we're all too small and make too little of an impact that we all need to work together. And there is an opportunity, for example, for a plant like yours or yours to also, like we're doing locally here, to sell some straight vegetable that's clean and filtered, and then go that route,
Right.
But there are different options, that's what I'm saying. And you also have to be aware that biofuels are not the only solution to solve every problem. So I think you have to be well conscious.
I agree with that, and one of the things I said to Josh at breakfast was, you want the big tent? You want us to say it's good to have nude on side? Fine. Like his parting message, great. You can embrace conservation because it doesn't hurt you, right, Josh? Don't throw us all out because we're all just going to eat steaks and drive SUVs. No. Go ahead and wrap your arms around conservation because it doesn't hurt. Makes your tent a little bigger. Yeah.
You mentioned the energy return on energy invested for biodiesel from recycled waste cooking oil. I know you used to have a link to a master's thesis. I think that
Still do.
looked at that as about 7.8 to 1. Is that about?
Yeah, we've had 2 life cycle analysis studies done on our facility. The first was on used cooking oil at our co-op scale, and our co-op scale was cranking along at about 1,000 gallons a month. Mm-hmm. So the 7 to 1 came out of the 1,000 gallon a month cavitational plant that we were operating. The second one, and these are all on our website, which is biofuels.coop, was done on poultry fat, and poultry fat performs much worse. Meat is a rotten converter of energy. So we were closer to a 2 to 1 on our year of poultry fat, and which we refer to, by the way, in hindsight as the winter of chicken. And the idea is, and we don't have a good one on our current plant, on our current scale. We're on used cooking oil right now, and we're on industrial scraps that we can find. So we'll get almond oil from the cosmetic industry, and we'll get sunflower oil from the algae industry, and so on. And it's and I don't have an LCA. So Kyle, MBAs, please. I need 2 or 3 of them for free. LCA on our current plant, and make sure they've got big brains and are familiar with the methodology, please.
We'll get them involved.
Thank you.
All right, I'll talk to him.
Okay.
Since you guys are very known for your R&D, have you done studies on long-term usage in vehicles? I know we all have experience in our own areas, but do you have documented well-researched studies so that when people come and say, I don't want to use biodiesel, I've heard that it screws up injector pumps, or we fight this all the time, and sort of looking and trying to. There are a few fleet studies in Canada here, but just not enough.
Yeah. So the answer is we don't. All we have is sort of our anecdotal evidence. Yeah, I've been on the biodiesel since 2002 and had to replace the radio. But the answer is we have exactly the same issues, and it's every time there's a change. So it's like, pump do say B100 is not going to work with pump do say. Alert. And it's like wrong.
Yeah.
Glided right through pump do say. It's like, whoops, that was a bunch of fear, uncertainty, and doubt over nothing. Right now we run a new clean diesel that's got about 50,000 miles on it. We've been taking the oil out, and when we do oil changes, we've been sending samples into NREL and saying, show us the biodiesel, please. We want to see the incomplete combustion showing back up in the crankcase, and have seen none of it. So the notion of this, you know, the particulate after treatment is, you know, not working with B100, I would say, is also mythical. So we just hit it over and over again, but it's not studies, it's not scientific. That's not really what we do research on. Most of our research has been on the fuel side and trying to get fuel going. Yes?
I think we have time for just about one more quick question.
Michael has a question.
I just wanted to make a couple of observations because I've been involved from the regulatory side. You will never have enough proof that there is no problem because you're trying to do something that is scientifically impossible. You're trying to prove a negative. The interesting cases are the ones like the truck driver in Greater Vancouver who was operating part of a municipal fleet that went to biodiesel. But they went to biodiesel in a staged manner, and this driver fell sick and was off work for 6 weeks, and it was right when the biodiesel came in, so it was obviously the biodiesel that was at fault. So they checked the record, and he was driving the truck that didn't have biodiesel.
Jerome, you had the one person that they couldn't start their car, and they lived on the biodiesel, and you found out it was a battery.
Oh, yeah.
Last question.
Mythbusting is what we do a lot of. We stand around and try to refute all of the things that we hear about the negatives of biofuels. It's a large waste of time. You need to say they lie, and then show them the results, and move on. Because you can sit around and debate that issue until you go out of business, or long after you go out of business. And it's not gonna help you other than I'm doing it, it's working. If you don't believe me, come and drive my car and I'll show you, and then move on.
That's a good point. I think
because trying to tell them that, you know, why they lie or how they're lying is a waste of time.
No, I think it's a good point. Henry Ford, we'll close with a quote from Henry Ford. It's one of my favorites. He says, you don't build a reputation on what you're going to do. So just do it, demonstrate it to the world, and that's what makes the change. Thank you.